Okay, good morning, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. Mikate's Parshas Chanukah to go 5784. This is a unique year, as mentioned last week, in that Parshas Mikate's this year is not, I repeat, it is not Shabbos Chanukah. It is Shabbos Stam. It's post Chanukah, which means that the Haftorah, which I implore everyone to look into, is rarely read for Mikate's. Story about Shlomo Melech in Malachim Aleph. It's important to look at that Haftorah every year, especially this year that we are learning it on not Shabbos Chanukah.
Rabbi,
yeah.
It's like I over actually the last 26 years.
Yeah.
When you read them, Parshas Mikate's
On Shabbos Chanukah, yeah. The last time this happened was 5781, which was the tail end of like that COVID year. So I don't think anyone remembers really what was happening. Not a lot of people were still yet back in shul, and it happened then. And then it only happened 20 years before that. So that's a lot of time. So it is the seventh day of Chanukah right now, and Bezrat Hashem, tonight is the last night Zos Chanukah. So I wanted to share a few pieces of Torah about Chanukah, and then we'll transition back into Parshas Mikate's. Rabbi Rabinovich quotes from the Rizhina Rav, the Yisrael of Rizhin, who writes that Zos Chanukah is the last night of Chanukah. That's what's called Zos Chanukah. After the Kriyas Torah that is given tomorrow, it's a pretty long Kriyas Torah because we wrap up and we lane all the Nisim that we didn't lane on the first 7 days of Chanukah. We finish it all, and the last paragraph is Zos Chanukah Samizbeach. Zos Chanukah, the 8th day of Chanukah. And Al Pi Chasidus, Al Pi Nistar, this day is a very holy day. This is really when you have your last chance, your last stop for the Yamin Noraim. And the original Rav used to say that the tefillos on Zos Chanukah, if one takes them seriously, they could achieve the same things that Tfilas Ne'ilah accomplished. Yachol kol Yehudi pasha levakesh v'lifol b'yom Zos Chanukah, yom ze gadol kolcho ad ma'od. There's a power, there's a strength in the last day of Chanukah. V'chein yesh l'chol adam b'yom ze lahaksiv zman levakesh aruchnius. A person should spend extra time, on the last night, the last day of Chanukah, to daven Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, strengthen your emunah, daven for Klal Yisrael. We can't underscore the importance enough of the importance of tefillah during these times of the year, especially now. So that's a header heading into our shiur for this morning. Secondly, he points out he has a sefer on Chanukah, Rabbi Rabinovich, and I don't have it in print. I have it in online. You can access it. And I hope for everyone, we found the Al Hanisim very relevant this year and in a different way. Not relevant, I found a new insight about Chanukah that I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought about that way looking at Chanukah. As opposed to that, as opposed to looking at Bayimim Haim, the Al Hanisim Tefillah is telling us a lot about Bazman Hazeh, about today. And the parallels, the similarities. One thing that struck me is the notion of thanking Hashem, praising God for the Mochamas. Al Nisa Valpurka Valchuos, the Al HaMilchamos Shasisa Labosina Bayimim Mahem Bazman Hazeh. Thank you, Hashem, for the Mochama. The Yesh Lahavin, Mahoda Al Mochama. Why are we thanking God for war? Kahatzala Muvan Mamodim Sharehi Tova Uniima. Adam. If you want to say that we're davening, thank you Hashem for winning the war, we said Al HaTshuos. Honey doesn't like that answer anyway, but we just said Al HaTshuos a second ago. So that is the recognition for winning the war. Aval HaMelchama Atzma Eina Ni'ima. War isn't pleasant, and nobody wants war. We don't ask for war. But So, and if we have to engage in war, thank you Hashem for winning a war. But why are we thanking God for the war itself? That's Shalomar, he suggests. If you look at, and we'll get there one day, I promise, Sefer Malachim, Aleph and Beis, and you will notice that we essentially follow after the kings, the leaders. If the leaders are behaving properly, then the Jewish people are inspired by the leader. And if the leaders themselves are putting up idols at every rest stop, on every highway in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, then we follow suit. Omnam, b'tkufas beis Chashmonai, when the Chashmonaim were around, something new happened. There was a Malchus Yavan Harisha'a, B'nei Yisrael lo nimshechu achareha. But the Jewish people did not follow through. Many did, but not everybody. But what did we do? We fought against the regime. This was new, to fight against the status quo. Why were we able to fight? The Chashmonaim felt very passionate about their Judaism. They felt very passionate about their ruchnius, and therefore they felt that they had no choice but to fight. And therefore they got up and they fought. And that was the fight. We're thanking Hashem that our forefathers, the Chashmonaim, were so connected to Torah and to mitzvos that they felt so connected that they had to fight. How passionate are we all the time that we feel the need to get up and fight? Too often, the feeling of the Jewish people is one of apathy, more than anything else. For those that did not see this, so sent my way, the Chabad Shliach in Harvard spoke yesterday rather publicly, right before he lit the Hanukkah menorah in a public area. And he spoke about how not one person has said anything of, to him, we have your back. He was at a meeting with 56 other chaplains of all different faiths. And he ripped them. He said, I can't believe it. I understand, or I don't understand, but I get it that the administration and no one's saying anything. But you guys can walk by these students for justice in Palestine and not say a word, not make a statement. You know what that says? But you're afraid? What do you represent over here? What are you representing? And did you know, I didn't know this, that for many, many years already, Harvard has told the Chabad Shliach, the Jewish community in Harvard, that after they light the menorah, they have to take it down and they have to bring it back inside. They can't leave it out for all 8 days of Hanukkah because they're afraid it's going to get vandalized and to create fissures within the community in Harvard. Of course, yeah, of course. And if
did any of those other clergy respond to the Chabad rabbi?
He didn't say, and he was smart because there's a lot of press right now in Harvard, and he spoke, in front of the press.
Rabbi Markowitz?
Yeah.
Manishtana. Why is that?
Manishtana Chanukah zeh mikol haChanukas. Okay,
No, I'm
100%. Now I think it's all coming out. I have actually a former student from Shiva Noam, who I taught is in Harvard now. And I found him online somewhere, speaking up. I'm so proud. But what is what does al milchamos mean? What does Rabbi Gamliel Rabbinovich mean here? I think this is such an important point. Thanking Hashem for the ability to fight. Thanking Hashem that we care so much to fight and that we have what to fight. For so many years, the Jewish people couldn't fight. We get up, we get knocked down again. And to the point where we learned helplessness. We are at a stage in our history we're very appreciative of, that we have the ability to fight. And that is ala milchamos. Thank you, Hashem, for giving us the strength to fight. Okay. Let's get on to, so that was an amazing idea. Let's go into Parshas Miketz. Miketz takes place 2 years. It takes place 2 years after the end of Parshas Vayeshev. We know a lot of the details, like the years of Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayichi are very, very clear because the Torah tells us Yosef was 17 and now he's this age, 22 years. We know a lot of the numbers of the years. So Yosef was punished. He was in jail for an extra 2 years. We pointed that out last week. Why was that a problem? It's not the first time that people, forget about the Jewish people languishing away, under the ground in a foreign land. So Paro has 2 dreams. He has 2 dreams, a dream about the cows and a dream about the wheat. He doesn't know how to interpret these dreams. And finally, and every answer he's not comfortable with, let's say like that. It doesn't satisfy him. So he doesn't take it seriously until he hears that the Sar HaMashkim has a guy. V'sham itanu, he tells it like this. 2 years ago, I was released from jail, and he says the following. I had a dream one night, and a guy interpreted my dream. V'sham itanu nari ivri eved l'sar tabachim. And also, remember you had this executioner that you also got rid of, and this is eved ivri l'sar tabachim, v'neseper lanu, v'neseper lo, right? And he told me, Vayiftar lanu es chalomo, seinu ish kal chalamo patar. Okay? He interpreted our dreams, each one based on our, personal dream, etc. First, he calls him in Na'ar Ivri Eved. So says Rashi that, Arubim harishayim shein tovasam shlema maskirim belashon bizayon. That our enemies, even when we help them, always use opportunities to knock us down and degrade us and continue to push us down. So our Mashkin wasn't necessarily an enemy. We weren't on the same side. Egyptian, always knock him down. You need to tell him that he's a Na'ar, he's an Eved, he's an Ivri. They would say mid-30s right now, right? He's not a Na'ar. Maybe still an Eved. He's in jail. Number 2, we see here, the Chazal praise Yosef, that he's called an Eved Ivri. He is very, very far away from his homeland, yet he is called a Hebrew. And the Chazal say that Kol HaModa B'Artzo, anyone that admits or considers himself a Ben Eretz Yisrael, is Nikbar B'Artzo, is buried in their land. Yosef was ultimately buried in Eretz Yisrael, in the Sefer Yeshua. Who was not? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is in Mitzrayim. He grows up in Mitzrayim. He leaves Mitzrayim and goes to Midyan. And when he's there, what do they call him? Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man. So you're going to say, it doesn't matter. What do you mean? Like he came from Egypt. He was born in Egypt. He came from Egypt. What? He didn't correct them. So Rav Ben Zion Zaks points out here that Yosef right now has the greatest excuse to not be considered a Hebrew. It would probably not be a good idea for him to people walking around, here's the Jew. That's the last thing that you'd want from how to identify Yosef as. Nonetheless, Yosef is not embarrassed. In fact, he's very proud of his Jewish status, of who he is as a person, and he walks around very proud of it. And it very much shows that he is Jewish. Back then, I don't know what that means. He wore yarmulke. I don't, but it's very, very clear the way he behaves, the way he speaks, that Yosef is a Jew, and it's picked up on immediately by everybody around him. Yosef represents for us the Jew in Galus that is unashamed and extremely proud of who he is. And he says, Vayiftar lanu. Vayiftar lanu says Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich, third idea from him this morning. Vayiftar lanu. Lanu is, honor of Mendy, is 86. 86 is Gematria Elokim. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, and Mem. Okay? Is Gematria 86. So what does he say? That what Yosef saw his responsibility was, it was not only to help people that were in jail with their problems. He had that skill and he was able to help the Saramashkim. Ultimately, it worked out for him. Because of that interpretation, he ends up as the second in command. His brothers come safely down to Mitzrayim, and everything works out very, very well. But he saw his role as something even more than that. Rabbi Rabinovich says that the role of a tzaddik is to help people see Hashem in their lives. And see Hashem both in their troubles and in their simchas. Vayiftar lanu, I'm in jail, and he helps me see God and see the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu throughout my experiences over here. And that's the hint to the word Vayiftar lanu. And that's really what Yosef was doing over here. Okay, so we began with Zos Chanukah, the importance of Zos Chanukah. What does Al HaMelchamos really mean? And just mentioned Nar Eved Ivri. What is Ivri, Nar Ivri Eved? What does that mean? So two interpretations. One, to show you how amazing Yosef was. He was very proud. Secondly, Vayiftar Lanu, that he was able to show us the hand of God in everything that we are doing. Okay. So Yosef has two children. Vayikra Yosef Hashem Bechor Menashe, Ki Nashani Elokim Es Kol Amali, that's called Beis Avi. He has one son named Menashe. We'll get to what it means in a second. Veshem Hasheni Kara Ephraim. The second son's name is Ephraim. Ki Hifrani Elokim Be'eretz Oni, because God helped me propagate and flourish in an oppressed land. Ephraim, why is he called Ephraim? Ki Hifrani, it sounds very, very similar. What the Dasakanim, Mibali Tosos writes, Kara Ephraim, the following. He is called Ephraim because he is like one of the Avos. He's naming his son after Avraham and Yitzchak. How is that? Avraham called himself Afer. Right before he davens for Sodom, he says, how can I daven for Sodom? Avanochi Afar ve'efer. I am considered just dust and ashes. Yitzchak, Chazal call Afer, the ashes, because it's like Yitzchak's Afer was on the Mizbeach. Afer agabi Mizbeach, the Ephraim mashma shtei afaros. Ephraim is Afer in plural, Ephraim times 2. Lakach nikru Yisrael al Shem Ephraim, and that's why the Jewish people are called Ephraim in the famous Haftorah. Habein Yakir Li Ephraim. They're also called Ephraim. The Tasakanim is saying that this was a hint to naming, right, Ephraim after 2 of the Avos, Avraham and Yitzchak. Very much Yosef's keeping to the Mesorah of his family. But let's go back to this name. Let's go back to the name Menashe. So what is this name? What does it mean? Kinashani Elokim Eskol Amali Eskol Beis Avi. Now what does that mean? Kinashani Elokim. If you open up an art scroll, you'll see it there probably, that he's thanking God for helping him forget all of the challenges and all the troubles that happened in my father's household. Asks Rav Hirsch, if that's true, that's very, very sad. First of all, it doesn't connect to what we just said. Ephraim is rooting himself in his Mesorah, in his great-grandparents, in Avraham and Yitzchak. And the first child's name is, God made me forget everything in my first household. It's hard to understand. So Rav Hirsch gives the following interpretation. He said the word Nashani comes from the word Nosheh. Nosheh means a creditor, right? A creditor is someone that's owed money. Accordingly, what does this mean? God has turned my tragedy and my family into my creditors. What until now seemed to be my misfortune and abuse, God has turned it into an instrument to shape my happiness. So I find myself deeply indebted to my troubles and to my family. Because things were so difficult for me back then, right now, I am the second in command in Mitzrayim. Right now, I don't yet see it because the brothers aren't yet there at this point in the story. But I do see that because of these misfortunes, I am in a very important position in the world where I can make change. So he says, I'm indebted to all the trouble that happened to me in the past. He's almost thanking Hashem for all the bad things that happened, for getting thrown into a pit, for getting thrown into jail, for getting sold into slavery. He's recognizing now and thanking God for being in that position. It's unbelievable. The word Nashani, right? So he says, so that's what he says the meaning is. And he's very, very positive and hopeful that this is going to mean something in the future in terms of also his, to meet up with his brothers and with his father, very, very soon. It's fascinating that we see the word Nasheh one other time in Bereshis. When do we see that word? Hinashani Elokim. Where do we see that word? Nin, nun, shin, hey. One other time in say Bereshis. Yaakov fights against the Malach. Fights against the Malach. And the Malach hits him in the thigh. And therefore, we can't eat the Gid Hanasha. The Gid Hanasha. So we just interpret the two words, Gid Hanasha, as like as a part of the body, a sinew, something in the body itself. But it's the same word. So it says Rav Hirsch here, so I was just curious, like, what does this mean here? The Nosheh who gives part of his property to another, and as a result now demands something from him. So you're a creditor. People owe you something. Nosheh denotes giving voluntarily, submitting to another without opposition. So what does it mean? The sinew of submission and powerlessness. This is not the anatomic, but the historical meaning of the tendon. When the gid was dislodged, the muscle was unable to control the bone. This loss of control, Yaakov suffered at the hand of his opponent. In this respect, he cannot stand up to him. He couldn't stand up anymore. He had to limp, walking away from the opponent. The tendon is here, the muscle is here, the bone is here, but their use is hampered, but not forever. Nashed denotes only temporary relinquishments, but not permanent loss. Yaakov is a nosheh, a creditor, who has a large account to settle with the Sarel Sha'esa. So Gid HaNasheh means, right, the memory of this incident has been preserved for all time in the prohibition of eating the Gid HaNasheh. The prohibition is certainly not intended to inform Yaakov's descendants of this fact that he fought with them, but both these facts in and of themselves are very little importance. And the commemoration by means of divine commandment can be explained only by the assumption that they bear truths of deep significance to our history of as a people. These truths give an everlasting expression renewal through their dietary explanation.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Last Shabbos, let someone wrote that Yosef is known to be the first Chacham in the history. I think this shows the reason why. Most people in life, they get up every day and they say, why did this have to happen? Why did this have to happen? Why did this happen? But he went ahead to all the bad things that happened to him and said he understood what life is really about. And yes, certain things are going to happen, but how do you take those things and now make them into good things?
Right.
That's the secret. If you know how to take it.
It's essentially what Yosef was doing. He was taking all of his terrible experiences and making making meaning into them.
You know, things that you have to connect dots, like this connecting dots. You don't see it right away, but you have to always have it in your mind to be able to reach back.
For Yosef, for me, what Yosef is, he doesn't give up on this. For some people, people can become very cynical, jaded, and angry at what has happened to them in life and completely close off what the interpretation of those life experiences. He makes lemonade out of it, right? But he's patient. He's patient in letting that experience happen. So our first writes here, what does the Gid HaNasheh represent for Yaakov vis-a-vis Esav? Is that Yaakov is okay relinquishing power to Esav. You want to be strong, Esav? You want to be physically stronger than me, and I'm limping and you're strong? Totally fine. You take those brachos from my father. I'm okay limping away, but also understand that I'm taking those spiritual, brachos with me. So the Gid of the creditor, right? He's owed. You take this, then I'll take something else. It was fascinating. Yaakov had an experience like that, and now Yosef is doing the same thing. But Yaakov really is taking meaning from that also difficult moment where his brother wants to murder him. He's taking meaning from there and taking something out of it. Yosef is doing the same exact thing many, many years later.
For Yosef, in a lot of ways, I would imagine emotionally more difficult. It's not a one-on-one. It's one versus all those brothers. And, that's hard to overcome. But they say all the time that
What was it? What's the comment?
make us appreciate the positive more. But
Correct.
What's the comment, Rabbi?
sometimes we think
What is?
Yeah. So that's Rav Hirsch, that it's really about making meaning into this experience. The Malbim,
What was the comment?
which comment? Is that Sam? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Sam. Sam? Okay. The Malbim writes that Yosef, in fact, was thanking Hashem for forgetting everything, but he was nervous because his memory was already fading. Kinashani Elokim, Hashem, I'm starting to forget some of the things that I learned from my father. I'm starting to forget some of that Misorah. I'm forgetting those recipes, right? I'm forgetting some of that Misorah from my parents, and I don't want that to fade. So the name he gives his son is a tefillah, that he's able to preserve the Torah, the life that he had in his parents' home. Okay. One last thought for this morning. This is an amazing one. The Yerushalmi learns out from our parsha the source for a minyan. So how do you know this? Anyone know? What? Yaakov sends his 10 sons down to Mitzrayim. Good. So the Chazal say the following. Vayivau b'nei Yisrael lishbor b'soch habayim ki haya ra'av be'eretz Canaan. The sons of Israel came down to Egypt to get food. We learn out also that in the pasuk v'nigdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael. B'nei Yisrael. So here, what do you have? B'soch habaim, yishbor b'soch habaim, b'soch, and v'nigdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael. So when you sanctify God's name, sing Kaddish in Dvarim Shebekdusha, is only done b'soch b'nei Yisrael. What does amongst the Jewish people mean? Well, look at this pasuk. The same word is used. B'soch. B'soch habaim. How many sons by Yaakov? 10 sons. So too, it must mean that there is a minyan being used. The Masechah in the Gemara in the Bavli used a very different source for this, and we've discussed that at other points in Parsha Sefer Bamidbar as to what this means. But what is the deeper meaning of this message over here? What's the deeper meaning? Because if you think about the story, Rashi tells us is that the brothers didn't go all through the same gate. They all went through different gates. Right? There are many different borders to get into, Egypt from Eretz Israel. So why did they do that? I think what we learned as children, I think Rashi says this. No, is that they were trying to avoid suspicion. If they all would come in together, maybe it would be. Yes. Avoid. The deeper meaning, though, is that they were looking for Yosef, and that they were hoping that if they would spread apart, they would be able to find Yosef in this way. The irony of the story is that the joke's on them. Because as they were looking for Yosef had already flagged their names in the TSA database, right? Their names were already flagged, and they were already brought in one at a time, right out of customs. You see here that this is the source for a minyan. These 10 men were not even close to each other. In proximation, they weren't close to each other. They're all over the country coming in. Yet, in their mind, they had one goal in mind. Deep down, there was one thing that they cared about more than others, and now they were thinking about their missing brother. Right? They had that in mind.
Yaakov was powerful, Yaakov was money. Brothers as well. Why didn't they go
Next week we'll maybe discuss it. Why didn't Yaakov had the resources? In years past, we asked why Yosef didn't send message to his father. Maybe we'll also address why Yaakov didn't send message, or the brothers go get him at a certain point. So postcard stamps, messenger pigeon, something. I hear you. But we see here that the real intent, what's Chazal's message here? But the intent for Tefillah B'tzibor is that everyone has and goes into Tefillah with their own things they need to ask for, that are uniquely theirs. What? You have your own agenda, and that's right. That's beautiful. That's great. We should have our own agenda coming into Tefillah, and Tefillah is said all in plural. There should be ultimate goals, right, that we have in mind. Even if we're coming from different gates and different entrances into the shul, not in the Shomrei Torah, one entrance, but we come in different entrances into the shul. But the intent of thinking about our brethren, right, is what should always be at the forefront of our mind, as was done originally by the OG minion, should also be done by us. Okay, it's with that we conclude for today. Wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos. Mazel tov again to Hani and Mendy and the upcoming Simcha. Bezrat Hashem this Shabbos, and enjoy the last day of Hanukkah.